The sun rose softly over the quiet neighborhood, filling the small kitchen with golden light. Maya sat at the table swinging her legs while her mother, Tanya, prepared breakfast. The smell of toast and cocoa drifted through the air, and the radio hummed gently in the background. It was a normal school morning, or at least it seemed like one. Tanya, still in her nursing scrubs, brushed her daughter's curls carefully, twisting them into neat sections. Maya loved this part of the morning, feeling her mother's hands move through her hair with patience and love. Each strand was moisturized and coiled, then decorated with little brown and gold beads. Tanya smiled and said softly, "Your hair is your crown, baby. Wear it proud." Maya nodded, grinning as she admired herself in the small mirror by the fridge. Her curls bounced when she turned her head. The beads clinking softly like music, she felt confident, ready for her art presentation at school. She didn't know that this very crown of pride would soon be the cause of tears. They walked together to the bus stop. Hand in hand, the neighborhood kids gathered, chatting about homework and cartoons. When the bus arrived, Tanya kissed Maya's forehead and said, "Remember who you are?" Maya climbed aboard, waving through the window until the bus turned the corner. She found her usual seat near the window and began sketching a picture of her mother. She liked drawing people she loved. Their faces made her feel safe. When the bus reached the school, Maya joined her friends walking down the hallway. She noticed a few kids staring at her hair and whispering, but she ignored it. She had been through this before, and her mother had told her that beauty didn't need permission. In the classroom, Miss Parker stood by the whiteboard, her voice sharp and strict. She was known as the kind of teacher who liked everything neat. Desks had to be straight, handwriting had to be tidy, and uniforms had to be spotless. She looked at Maya and frowned slightly. "Your hair is distracting again, Maya," she said. The room went silent, everyone's eyes turning toward her. Maya froze, unsure how to respond. She wanted to explain that her hair wasn't messy. It was just curly, just her, but the words stuck in her throat. Mrs. Parker sighed and muttered something about school standards before turning back to the board. Maya felt a lump in her chest but tried to focus on her work. Hours passed slowly during reading time. A boy behind her reached out and flicked one of her beads, laughing quietly. "Stop it," Maya whispered, but he didn't. Ms. Parker noticed the small commotion and snapped, "What is going on?" The boy quickly blamed Maya, saying her hair was the problem. Before Maya could defend herself, Ms. Parker marched over with a pair of scissors from her desk. She said, "If it's causing distraction, we'll fix it." The sound of the scissors opening echoed like thunder in the quiet room. Maya's heart started pounding. "Please don't," she whispered, her voice trembling. But Ms. Parker didn't stop. Snip. The first curl fell to the floor, then another. The class gasped. Some children covered their mouths in shock. Maya sat frozen, tears welling up in her eyes. The teacher didn't seem to notice. She just kept muttering about rules and discipline. When she was done, Maya's once beautiful curls were uneven. Chopped and ruined, she felt exposed, like a part of her identity had been stolen. The bell rang, releasing everyone for lunch. Maya didn't move. She just stared at the small pieces of her hair scattered on the ground. Her hands shook as she tried to gather them, as if holding them could undo what happened. The other students left quietly. Not knowing what to say, Miss Parker didn't look at her, just walked to the front of the class and started erasing the board. Maya picked up her backpack and walked to the bathroom inside. She looked into the mirror and hardly recognized herself. Her curls were uneven, the beads missing. The beauty her mother had created that morning gone. Tears rolled down her cheeks and she whispered, "Mama told me it's my crown." But now it felt like someone had taken her crown away. She didn't know what to do next, but she knew one thing for sure. Her mother would find out, and when she did, nothing would ever be the same again. The bell had just stopped ringing when Maya finally stepped out of the classroom. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bag to her chest. Her hair still uneven, she could feel eyes following her, whispering voices floating through the hallway like smoke. Some kids pointed, others looked away quickly. Pretending not to notice, her steps were slow, heavy, each one echoing like a drumbeat in her ears. It wasn't just embarrassment now, it was confusion, fear, and something deeper, betrayal. Her teacher, the person meant to protect her, had humiliated her instead. Maya walked into the girls' bathroom and locked herself in the last stall. She leaned against the door, breathing hard. When she looked in the small scratched mirror on the wall, she saw a stranger staring back. Her curls were jagged and uneven, one side short, the other longer. Tiny pieces of hair clung to her sweater. She brushed them away, but the feeling of being cut lingered like a bruise. A quiet sob escaped her lips. She didn't want anyone to hear, but her pain had nowhere else to go after a few minutes. The door creaked open and her friend Kiara walked in. Kiara's eyes widened when she saw Maya. "Oh my God, what happened?" Maya wiped her tears quickly, trying to act strong. "Ms. Parker cut my hair," she whispered. Kiara's face changed, shock turning into anger. "She did what? Why would she?" Maya shrugged. "She said it was distracting." Kiara stepped closer, pulling a hoodie out of her backpack. "Here, wear this. You can cover your head," but Maya shook her head slowly. "No, I didn't do anything wrong, I won't hide." Her voice cracked, but her words carried a quiet kind of courage. The two girls stood there for a moment, neither knowing what to do next. Finally, Maya took out her phone from her pocket, her hands still shaking. She turned the camera on herself and snapped a picture. No smile, no filters, just her face, her uneven hair, her truth. Then she opened her messages and sent the picture to her mother. No words added. Tanya was at work, busy with her patients when her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen, and for a second her breath stopped. She stared at the picture, her daughter's broken expression telling a story no words could explain. Without hesitation, Tanya grabbed her purse and said to her coworker, "I have to go now, back at school." Maya walked quietly to the counselor's office. The hallway seemed longer than usual, every step filled with dread when she entered. The counselor, Mrs. Jacobs, looked up from her desk with a polite smile. "Hi, Maya, what brings you here?" she asked. Maya hesitated, then took a deep breath and said, "My teacher cut my hair." Mrs. Jacobs blinked in surprise, then frowned. "What do you mean she cut it? Like, actually cut it?" Maya nodded, showing her uneven curls. The counselor's expression softened, but her tone stayed careful, measured. "That's very serious, Maya. I'll need to write a report and talk to Ms. Parker about this." Maya waited, hoping someone would say it was wrong, that it would be fixed, but Mrs. Jacobs simply added, "You should go back to class now, okay? We'll handle it." Her words felt empty, like they were meant to calm, not to act. When Maya returned to the hallway, the whispers had grown louder. Some students from other classes were talking. "Did you hear what happened? Ms. Parker actually cut her hair." Rumors spread fast, changing details, adding lies by lunch break. Some kids were saying Maya broke a rule. Others said it was her fault for being too loud. Too proud. She sat at the corner table of the cafeteria, picking at her food, her stomach too tight to eat. Kiara sat beside her silently. Holding her hand under the table, neither spoke. But both knew things had gone too far to ignore. In the principal's office upstairs, Mr. Alvarez was reading a message from the counselor. His eyes narrowed as he read the brief description of what had happened. He called the front office and said, "Get Ms. Parker in here immediately." At the same time, the receptionist looked up as a woman in blue nursing scrubs burst through the doors. It was Tanya, her face calm but her eyes burning with quiet fury. She didn't yell, didn't demand, she simply said, "Where is my daughter?" The receptionist hesitated, fumbling for words. "Ma'am, we can call her down," but Tanya interrupted. "No, I'll go to her myself." Her voice was low, steady, powerful enough to stop the entire office. As Tanya walked through the hall, her shoes clicking against the linoleum, students peered out of classroom doors, whispering to each other. Maya, sitting in the cafeteria, looked up just in time to see her mother appear in the doorway. For a moment, everything went quiet. Even the noise of trays and chatter seemed to fade. Tanya's eyes met her daughter's, and Maya stood up, tears finally spilling over. Her mother crossed the room and wrapped her arms around her tightly. No words were needed, because the truth was already written on Maya's face. And though the school didn't yet know it, this was the moment everything was about to change. Because Tanya had come, and she wasn't leaving without justice. The sound of Tanya's footsteps echoed through the hallway like a slow drumbeat, steady and controlled, yet full of fire. Students peeked from classroom doors, teachers paused mid-lesson, whispers spreading faster than the morning bell. Everyone could feel it. Something serious was about to happen. The receptionist hurried after Tanya, pleading, "Ma'am, please, let the principal handle it." But Tanya didn't even slow down. Her scrub still smelled faintly of antiseptic and lavender soap, her ID badge swinging as she walked. She had come straight from the hospital. leaving a patient mid-shift because her daughter's face in that photo had said everything. It wasn't just hair, it was dignity, it was history. It was the part of Maya that Tanya had protected since the day she was born. When Tanya reached the cafeteria, every student turned to look. The chatter died instantly, replaced by a heavy electric silence. Maya saw her mother first, standing tall, eyes fierce, posture unshakable, and she froze for a moment. Then, as if something inside her finally broke, she ran into her mother's arms. Tanya bent down, pulling Maya close, feeling the uneven tufts of hair under her hand. For a second, she couldn't breathe. It was like holding a piece of her child's pain right in her palm. "Mama," Maya whispered, her voice shaking. "She cut my hair. In front of everyone." Tanya closed her eyes, her jaw tightening. "It's okay, baby. I'm here now," she murmured. Then she stood up slowly, her hand still on Maya's shoulder, and said firmly, "Take me to your teacher." The assistant principal appeared. Nervous and unsure, "Mrs. Tanya, please. We can set up a meeting." But Tanya shook her head. "No meetings, not later, right now." She guided Maya down the hall, her arm protectively around her. Students moved aside, whispering as they passed. When they reached the classroom, Ms. Parker was standing near her desk, pretending to organize papers. She looked up, startled, when the door opened. Tanya's gaze locked on her, calm, steady, and cold as steel. "Are you the one who cut my daughter's hair?" she asked quietly. Ms. Parker froze. The words she'd prepared suddenly vanished. I was just trying to enforce the rules," she stammered. Tanya stepped closer. "Rules?" she repeated. "What rule allows you to touch a child's body without permission?" The air grew heavy. Even the students sitting in their seats seemed afraid to breathe. Ms. Parker's lips trembled. "It was distracting others. I only wanted—" "You wanted control," Tanya interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. "You didn't ask, you didn't call, you didn't think. You just cut." Each word landed like a hammer. Deliberate, measured, impossible to ignore. Maya stood beside her mother, holding onto her sleeve, trembling but safe. Ms. Parker looked at the ground. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she whispered. Tanya's voice softened, but it didn't waver. "Intent doesn't erase harm, Ms. Parker. It reveals it." She took a deep breath. "Now, we'll go see your principal. Together." The walk to the principal's office was silent except for the faint squeak of shoes on the polished floor. Mr. Alvarez, the principal, was already waiting, his expression tight. He gestured for them to sit, but Tanya remained standing. "Maya will sit," she said. "She deserves to be heard first." Mr. Alvarez nodded, turning his chair toward Maya. "Sweetheart, can you tell me what happened?" Maya's voice trembled at first, but she began to speak. She told them how Miss Parker had called her hair distracting, how she had begged her to stop, how the class had watched in silence. Every word seemed to echo off the walls, heavier than the last by the end. Even the principal's face had lost its color. Miss Parker sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes wet. "I admit what I did," she said quietly. "I thought I was helping, but I see now I was wrong." Tanya crossed her arms, her tone even. "Helping who?" "Because you didn't help my child." The room fell silent again. Tanya then turned to the principal. "You have policies about touching students, don't you?" "Yes," Mr. Alvarez admitted. "And they're clear. No staff member may alter a student's appearance in any way." "Then this isn't just about rules," Tanya said. "It's about respect, about power, about my child being treated as less." Her words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Tanya leaned closer and said softly, "You don't get to take from a child what you can't give back." She placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, steady and strong. "My daughter's hair isn't just hair," she continued. "It's heritage, it's love, it's how she knows where she comes from." Miss Parker bowed her head, tears finally falling. "I'm sorry, I truly am," she whispered. Tanya looked at her, her expression unreadable. Sorry is where it starts, not where it ends. She turned to the principal. "We'll be back tomorrow morning for a full meeting. And I expect written action, i.e. not excuses." Then she took Maya's hand and led her out of the room as they stepped into the hallway. Students stood watching silently. Maya's tears had stopped, replaced by something new, the strength. For the first time that day, she lifted her chin, because her mother had walked in, and suddenly, she didn't feel small anymore. The next morning arrived heavy with tension, the kind that clings to walls and lingers and whispers. Parents gathered in the front office, teachers exchanged uncertain looks, and students sensed that something big was about to unfold. Tanya and Maya walked into the school together, hand in hand, both calm but unreadable. Maya wore a simple headband that Auntie Joy had given her that morning. Not to hide, but to show she was still standing tall. Her eyes were swollen from the night before, yet filled with quiet courage. Tanya had not slept much. She had spent the night writing down everything that happened, every name, every word, every policy that had been ignored today. She wasn't coming as just a mother. She was coming as a witness, a protector, and a voice for every child who had ever been silenced. When they entered the principal's office, the air was thick with unease. Mr. Alvarez stood up from his chair, straightening his tie nervously. Ms. Parker sat at the far end of the table, her face pale, eyes red from crying, a folder clutched tightly in her lap. The counselor, Mrs. Jacobs, was there too, shifting awkwardly in her seat, pretending to look at her notes. "Thank you for coming." "Mrs. Tanya," the principal began carefully. "We want to talk this through calmly." Tanya nodded, her tone even. "Calm is fine, but truth is better." She guided Maya to a chair beside her, then looked around the room. "My daughter will speak first." Everyone turned to Maya. The room felt enormous to her, like it was swallowing her voice, but she took a deep breath. Her mother's hand rested gently on her back. Reminding her she wasn't alone, Maya spoke softly. "Ms. Parker said my hair was distracting." She paused. Then she took scissors and started cutting it in front of everyone. Her voice wavered. I told her to stop, but she didn't. The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the ticking clock on the wall sounded loud. Maya's fingers twisted together, but she didn't look away. "I didn't feel safe," she finished, "and everyone was watching." Ms. Parker swallowed hard, her voice trembling when she finally spoke. "I made a terrible mistake," she said. "I thought I was helping her fit in, helping her look neat. But I see now that I hurt her deeply." Tanya leaned forward slightly, her tone calm but piercing. "Helping her fit into what, Ms. Parker?" The teacher hesitated. "Into school rules, into—" Tanya interrupted softly. "Or into your idea of what's acceptable." The question hung in the air like thunder before a storm. Mr. Alvarez looked uncomfortable. Adjusting his glasses, Tanya continued. "My daughter's hair wasn't messy, it was cultural, beautiful, and hers. You took it upon yourself to decide that her natural self was wrong." Ms. Parker wiped a tear from her cheek, whispering, "I didn't mean to cause harm." Tanya nodded slowly. "Intent doesn't erase impact," she said. "A mistake can be forgiven, but it must also be corrected." She turned to the principal. "Your staff handbook says, no physical contact with a student's body or belongings without consent, correct?" Mr. Alvarez sighed. "Yes, that's correct." "Then what happened here wasn't just a misunderstanding," Tanya said, her voice steady. "It was a violation of policy, of trust, and of my daughter's dignity." The counselor finally spoke, trying to mediate. "We can offer sensitivity training, and Ms. Parker has already written an apology." Tanya shook her head. "An apology is not the solution. It's the beginning." She reached into her purse and pulled out a printed document, placing it on the table. "This," she said, "is a formal complaint to the district, along with a proposal for policy review. I want written assurance that this will never happen to another child in this school again." Mr. Alvarez looked taken aback. "You've already filed it?" "Yes," Tanya replied, "last night." Her tone was calm. Not angry, the kind of calm that comes from conviction. Not rage. Maya watched her mother speak with admiration. For the first time, she understood that courage wasn't loud. It was steady. It was speaking truth in rooms built to silence it. Ms. Parker began to cry quietly, her shoulders trembling. "I truly am sorry," she whispered. "I wish I could take it back," Tanya sighed. "You can't take it back. But you can learn from it," she said gently. "And the best apology is change." Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat. "Mrs. Tanya, I will personally make sure the district reviews this incident, and will hold a staff meeting today to discuss cultural sensitivity and boundaries." Tanya nodded but added, "Include the students too. They witnessed this and silence can wound them too." The principal nodded slowly. "You're right." The meeting ended quietly. No shouting, no slamming doors. Just the kind of silence that follows when truth is spoken. As Tanya and Maya left the office, the hallway seemed lighter somehow. Students whispered again. But this time the tone was different. Respectful, curious, even inspired. Maya's head was held higher now, her mother's words still echoing in her mind. When they reached the parking lot, Tanya knelt in front of her and said softly, "You did good today. You spoke your truth." Maya smiled faintly. "I was scared," she admitted. Tanya brushed a hand over her daughter's short curls. "Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right even when you are." As they drove away, the school behind them wasn't just a building anymore. It was a place that had seen harm. And now, perhaps, the beginning of change. The afternoon sun bathed the small salon in a warm amber glow. The soft hum of blow dryers blending with quiet gospel music playing from an old radio. Auntie Joy's beauty haven wasn't just a place for styling. It was a sanctuary. A place where stories, pain, and pride intertwined like the braids she crafted daily. Maya sat in the big chair near the mirror, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on her reflection. Her curls were uneven, patchy from where Ms. Parker's scissors had hacked through them, the damage as visible as the memory of that humiliating moment. Auntie Joy walked over, a woman with kind eyes and a voice that carried warmth like honey. "Baby girl," she said gently, touching Maya's chin. "Hold your head up. Let me see that beautiful face." Maya tried to smile, but it faltered halfway. Her reflection didn't look like her anymore. "It's just hair," she whispered, the words trembling as if she didn't quite believe them. Auntie Joy chuckled softly. "Oh no, sugar, it's never just hair." Tanya sat nearby, her scrub still on. Sipping coffee gone cold, she had been silent most of the time, letting her sister take the lead. Auntie Joy began sectioning Maya's hair carefully, combing it with patience, the kind only someone who knows the pain behind every tangle could offer. She worked slowly, murmuring, "Hair carries memory. It tells who we are and where we come from." Maya blinked, watching her in the mirror. "Memory?" she asked quietly. "Mm-hmm." Auntie Joy said, "These curls carry your mama's love. Your grandma's prayers, your great-grandmama's strength, all twisted and coiled into beauty." She smiled. "When somebody cuts that without care, they cut through more than hair. They cut through pride." Maya looked at her reflection again, this time not with shame but curiosity, like seeing something deeper beneath the surface. As Auntie Joy worked, Tanya began telling the story of her own first haircut. "When I was your age, a girl in my class said my hair looked like wire," she said softly. "I cried all the way home." She looked down at her hands, remembering. "Mama told me that some people only understand beauty if it looks like theirs, but that doesn't make ours less." Maya listened closely, letting her mother's words sink in like roots finding soil. Auntie Joy twisted another curl and added, "You see, baby, every kink, every coil, that's resilience. It's how we rise, no matter how many times the world tries to press us flat." The scissors in her hand snipped delicately now, trimming uneven ends into a shape that framed Maya's face softly. Each cut was careful, gentle, healing what the last cut had broken. Outside, the sky began to dim, the streetlights flickering on one by one. Inside the salon, laughter replaced silence. Auntie Joy telling old stories of clients who'd cried in that same chair, then left smiling. She handed Maya a mirror and said, "Now look again." Maya stared. The jagged ends were gone, replaced by a short, beautiful shape that made her eyes stand out. Her curls bounced softly around her face. Still hers, still strong, only different. Tanya smiled. "You look beautiful, baby." For the first time since that awful day, Maya believed it. Auntie Joy reached into a small box and took out a set of golden beads that glimmered in the warm light. "These are for you," she said. "Each bead means something. Love, courage, heritage, and hope." She clicked one bead into place and whispered, "Wear them proud." Maya nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. Auntie Joy kissed the top of her head. "Don't thank me. Thank the women before you who wore their crowns even when others tried to knock them off." The words sank deep, becoming part of her like invisible armor. As they left the salon, the night air felt cool against her skin. They walked to the car, the street quiet except for the sound of Maya's new beads clinking together, soft but strong. In the car, Tanya reached for her hand. "You okay?" she asked. Maya nodded, smiling faintly. "I think so." Tanya exhaled slowly. "Tomorrow we'll go to the board meeting. Tell them everything. This isn't just about you. It's about every kid like you." Maya looked out the window, her reflection shimmering against the glass, the beads catching bits of streetlight. She whispered to herself, "They can't take what's part of me." Back at home, Tanya tucked her daughter into bed. Maya lay still for a moment, then said softly, "Mama, do you think Miss Parker meant to hurt me?" Tanya sat beside her, brushing her fingers through Maya's curls. "Sometimes people don't mean harm, but they still cause it, and that's why we speak up. So they learn." Maya nodded slowly. "I don't want to hate her." Tanya smiled gently. "That's good, baby. Forgiveness is power, but never forget that justice is love in action." Maya's eyes grew heavy, her breathing even. As Tanya turned off the light, the faint click of beads was the last sound in the room. Outside, the wind rustled the trees softly, and inside, a little girl began to dream again. Not of pain, but of pride, and of a crown no one could ever take again. The next morning dawned gray and cool, clouds hanging low like a curtain before a storm. At the kitchen table, Tanya reviewed a stack of papers neatly clipped together. Witness statements, copies of school policy, and the official complaint she'd filed. Maya sat across from her, nervously tracing circles on her notebook, her golden beads clicking softly every time she moved. Today wasn't just another school day. It was the day they faced the district, the day adults would be forced to listen to a child's truth. Tanya looked up and smiled gently. "You ready, baby?" Maya nodded, though her hands were trembling. "I think so," she said, her voice small but steady. Tanya reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. "Remember, you don't owe them fear, you owe them honesty." When they arrived at the school board office, the waiting room buzzed with quiet tension. Reporters lingered outside, whispering questions, cameras flashing occasionally through the glass doors. Word had spread. Teacher cuts students' hair without permission, and the community had taken notice. Inside, a group of district officials sat behind long wooden tables, folders and laptops in front of them. Mr. Alvarez, the principal, sat near the corner, looking uneasy. Ms. Parker was there too, dressed plainly. Her eyes downcast, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Tanya and Maya entered the room together, drawing every eye toward them. Maya's head was held high, her short curls glowing under the fluorescent lights, beads softly chiming with each step. The district chairwoman, Miss Green, adjusted her glasses and began, "We're here to review the incident that occurred between Mrs. Parker and Maya Thompson, a student of Jefferson Middle School." She paused, glancing at Tanya. "Mrs. Thompson, thank you for attending. Please begin when you're ready." Tanya stood, not hurried but deliberate, like someone who'd carried the weight of generations in her spine. "Thank you, Miss Green," she said. "My daughter is not here today to be pitied. She's here to be respected." Her voice was calm, clear, powerful enough to silence the quiet rustle of papers. She was humiliated, publicly and physically, because someone decided that her natural self was not acceptable. Tanya looked toward Mrs. Parker, not with anger but with truth. "You took scissors to more than her hair. You cut through trust, through culture, through something sacred." The room stayed silent, every word landing like stone. Then Tanya placed a photo of Maya, taken that day in the bathroom, on the table. Gasps rippled across the room, the image of the uneven hair and tear-streaked face saying more than words ever could. Maya's small voice followed, soft but firm. "I didn't do anything wrong." Her mother smiled faintly, letting her speak. "I just wanted to learn, but when she cut my hair, I felt like I didn't belong anymore." She paused, looking around the room. "And I don't want any other kid to feel that way." Her voice broke slightly, but she lifted her chin, her courage shining through the cracks. Miss Parker wiped her eyes, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I was wrong. Completely wrong. I acted without thought, and I can't undo it. She looked at Maya. I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry you say to make things quiet, but the kind you mean when you know you broke something. Tanya listened carefully, then asked, So what will you do with that realization? Ms. Parker blinked, confused. I'll take the training. Tanya shook her head. Training is a start, not a solution. Real accountability means action that changes more than your record. It changes your understanding. She turned to the district panel. What happens now must set an example, because if you stay silent, you teach silence. Ugh. The chairwoman nodded gravely. We agree, Mrs. Thompson, this is unacceptable, and the district will respond accordingly. She glanced at her colleagues and continued, We'll be implementing mandatory cultural competence training, revising our disciplinary policies, and creating a restorative justice program for incidents involving student identity and safety. Tanya crossed her arms. And how will you ensure that isn't just a speech? Miss Green met her eyes. We'll make it measurable. Staff reviews, parent feedback, and student reporting channels, Maya smiled faintly. For once, adults were listening, not just talking. Before the meeting ended, Maya raised her hand timidly. Can we also have something for students? She asked. Like a week to celebrate who we are, our hair, our skin, our culture. Everyone looked surprised. Even Tanya, but the room softened immediately. Ms. Green smiled. That's a beautiful idea, Maya. We can make that happen. She looked at the board members. Let's call it Heritage and Identity Week. Applause spread slowly around the room. Genuine and gentle, even Ms. Parker clapped quietly, tears still glistening in her eyes. Afterward, as they left the building, reporters swarmed the steps. Cameras flashing, Tanya shielded Maya gently, answering only one question. What do you hope comes from this? She smiled faintly. That my daughter's pain becomes someone else's lesson. They walked to their car in silence, the weight of the day heavy but cleansing. As they drove home, Maya looked out the window, her reflection steady, her beads glowing in the afternoon light. Mama, she said softly, do you think people will really change? Tanya smiled, eyes fixed on the road. Change doesn't start with people. It starts with truth. And today we spoke it. And for the first time in weeks, the air around them felt lighter, because accountability had begun, not as punishment but as promise. Days turned into weeks, and the story of Maya's courage spread far beyond the school walls. What began as a painful memory slowly started transforming into a movement of change. The district followed through on their promise. Not perfectly, but with real intention, posters appeared in the hallways. Respect every crown, every voice, every child. And beneath the words was a photo of Maya, her curls glowing, her eyes bright, her smile soft but unshakable. For the first time, her picture hung in the same hallway where students once whispered about her. Now those whispers had turned into conversations about pride, identity, and healing. Miss Parker, once the teacher who cut without thinking, now arrived early every day, sitting in the counselor's office before class began. She volunteered to participate in the new Restorative Circle program. Led by community mentors and parents there, teachers were asked to listen, really listen, to the voices of the students they taught. The first session was awkward, a room filled with silence and guilt. But change rarely begins comfortably. When Ms. Parker's turn came, she took a deep breath and said, I didn't understand what hair meant. I thought I was maintaining order. But I was maintaining control, her voice trembled. I hurt a child because I didn't see her fully. Her words hung in the air, honest and painful but necessary. For the first time, she wasn't defending herself. She was facing herself. Meanwhile, Maya had been invited to speak at the first Heritage and Identity Week, an event she herself had inspired. The entire school buzzed with anticipation. There were art displays, music, and even a hair care showcase where parents and stylists demonstrated cultural traditions. Auntie Joy stood at the center of it all, her laughter echoing through the auditorium as she braided tiny strands into patterns that told stories. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she walked onto the stage in a yellow dress, her golden beads clinking softly with each step. The crowd quieted as she adjusted the microphone, her voice steady though her heart raced. My hair was cut, she began, but my pride was not. She paused, letting her words sink in. I learned that pain can grow power if we plant it in truth. She looked out at her classmates, some nodding, some teary-eyed. We all have something that makes us who we are. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. The audience erupted into applause, but Maya only smiled modestly, stepping off the stage and into her mother's waiting arms. Tanya whispered, "I'm proud of you, baby. You turned pain into purpose." Maya hugged her tightly. "I didn't do it alone," she said, glancing at her aunt and even at Ms. Parker sitting quietly near the back. After the event, students lined up to talk to Maya, sharing their own stories. A girl who was told her hijab was a distraction, a boy teased for his accent, a classmate who felt invisible because of his stutter. Maya listened to them all, realizing that what had happened to her wasn't just hers. It was part of a bigger story of kids learning to be seen. Her bravery had cracked something open, and now light was pouring through. Ms. Parker approached her after most people had left, holding a small box in her hand. "I wanted to give you this," she said softly, handing it to Maya. Inside was a handmade wooden comb carved with patterns of vines and stars. "I made it during the workshop," Ms. Parker explained, her eyes glistening. "They told us to make something that represents restoration. I thought of you." Maya ran her fingers along the carved lines. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I forgive you." Tears spilled down Ms. Parker's cheeks, relief and remorse blending into one. "Your forgiveness means more than you know," she whispered. Maya smiled faintly. "Then make it mean something for the next kid who feels different." Later that week, the principal invited parents and students to design a new classroom pledge, not written by adults but by the children themselves. Maya helped write the opening line, "We belong here, every part of us." That pledge was printed on posters and placed in every room, a daily reminder that respect isn't a rule, it's a culture. Tanya helped organize follow-up meetings with the district to ensure promises weren't forgotten. Her calm persistence earned her a place on the new Parent Advisory Council, giving her a seat at the very table where she once had to fight for one. Auntie Joy hosted after-school workshops on self-care and pride, teaching girls how to braid each other's hair while talking about dreams and history. She said, "This isn't about style, it's about strength, the kind that grows when hands care, not harm." By the end of the semester, Jefferson Middle School didn't look the same. The walls were brighter, the conversations bolder, and the students prouder. Change hadn't come from an email or a policy. It had come from truth spoken by a mother and courage shown by a child. On the final day of Heritage Week, Maya stood in front of the mural her art class had painted, a black girl's silhouette surrounded by swirling curls that turned into stars. At the bottom, the words read, "Every crown holds a story." She traced the letters lightly, beads clicking like applause. Ms. Parker passed by and whispered, "You've changed this place." "Maya." Maya smiled softly. "We all did," she said, and as the sun poured through the windows, it felt as though the whole school was breathing differently, no longer ashamed, but alive. Repair wasn't just in motion now. It was finally taking root, growing strong one story at a time. Spring sunlight spilled across the courtyard of Jefferson Middle School, warm and golden, dancing on the walls where new murals had bloomed. Students filled the air with laughter and chatter, carrying paint-stained hands, musical instruments, and stories that felt freer than before. The world hadn't turned perfect overnight, but something inside the school had shifted, something quiet yet lasting. Maya walked down the hallway slowly, her beads clicking like a soft rhythm, a song of her own making. She passed the display board that once held test results and announcements, now filled with photos from Heritage and Identity Week. There she was, smiling, standing on stage beside kids of every color, every culture. Underneath the photo, a handwritten note read, "Courage is contagious." Ms. Parker's classroom door stood open, sunlight spilling across the floor. Maya peeked in and saw her teacher arranging art supplies on a table for an after-school club. "Hi, Ms. Parker," she said softly. The older woman turned, her expression warm but humble. "Maya, I was hoping I'd see you." Maya stepped inside, the familiar scent of chalk and paper in the air. "Looks different in here," she said, glancing around. The posters on the walls had changed, no longer the old rules for order, but ones that read respect, empathy, humanity, each painted by students themselves. Ms. Parker smiled faintly. "Yes, it feels different too." She hesitated, then added, Thank you for giving me a chance to learn from what I did. Maya nodded. Thank you for trying to change, she said. It wasn't a grand moment, no tears, no speeches, just two people standing in a room once filled with pain, now carrying quiet understanding. Later that day, Tanya walked through the same hallway, stopping outside the principal's office where a new plaque had been hung. It read, Student Dignity Policy, established in memory of Maya Thompson's courage. She stood still, emotion rising like a tide she tried to contain. Mr. Alvarez approached, his voice gentle. We wanted something that lasts, Tanya smiled, eyes glistening. It's beautiful, she whispered. But make sure it lives, not just hangs on a wall. He nodded. It will. There was a pause, the kind filled with mutual respect, the kind that comes after storms and rebuilding. At home that evening, the small family gathered in the kitchen, the scent of sweet cornbread and stew filling the air. Auntie Joy sat at the table, braiding a little neighbor girl's hair while telling one of her famous stories. Tanya leaned against the counter, exhausted but peaceful, and Maya sat beside her art project, a canvas filled with swirling curls that turned into galaxies. She was painting her final piece for the school exhibition titled The Crown Rebuilt. Each stroke of her brush felt deliberate, each curve a reflection of what she had endured. When she stepped back, she smiled. It's not about what was taken, she said softly to her mother. It's about what grew after. Tanya brushed a tear from her cheek. You've grown, my love, stronger than I ever imagined. The next day, Maya's painting hung in the center of the school gallery, surrounded by art from every grade. Parents, teachers, and students gathered, admiring the pieces that told stories of identity, pride, and resilience. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she stood before the crowd. Nervous but radiant, she said, A while ago, I thought my hair being cut made me lose something. But it helped me find something too, my voice. Her voice carried through the room, soft yet firm. Sometimes bad things happen not to destroy us, but to show us how strong we are, she smiled. And if my story taught anyone that, then maybe it was worth it. The audience erupted into applause, Auntie Joy whistling loudly while Tanya wiped her eyes with pride. Even Miss Parker stood at the back, clapping quietly, her heart lighter than it had been in years. As the evening ended, Maya stepped outside. Watching the sky turn orange and violet, the wind brushed against her curls, and her beads sang softly in the breeze. She closed her eyes and breathed in the cool air, feeling something sacred settle deep inside her. Peace, not the fragile kind that breaks under pressure, but the kind built on truth, forgiveness, and love. Weeks later, life returned to its steady rhythm. Homework, laughter, art club meetings, and weekend visits to Auntie Joy's salon became normal again. But the story of Maya and her mother continued to ripple quietly through the town, in conversations, in classrooms, in every child who dared to wear their crown proudly. The school district adopted the student dignity policy in every school. Teachers attended workshops led by parents and community members, not out of punishment but partnership, and once a year, during Heritage and Identity Week, the first story they told was Maya's one afternoon. Maya found herself standing in front of the mirror again. The same mirror that once reflected tears now showed confidence, warmth, and hope. Her hair had grown longer, fuller, more radiant than before. She smiled at her reflection, whispering, "You're still you." Then she picked up her brush and began drawing, this time, not herself, but a group of children laughing, their hair in all shapes and colors. Above them she wrote, "We belong here outside." The golden sun poured through the window, and in that quiet moment, it felt as though the world itself was nodding in agreement. Because though so much had changed, one truth remained. Hair could be cut, wounds could sting, but dignity, once reclaimed, never fades. Maya's story would live on, not as a scar but as a light, guiding others to stand taller, speak louder, and wear their crowns without apology.